Hello and welcome to TheFederal. You're watching Off the Beaten Track, a program in which we pick one issue and take 360-degree view of it. India is in the middle of elections. Billions have already started voting or are just preparing to vote. For the next 2 months, almost 2 months, India is going to be talking primarily about elections and politics. So how can we not talk about it? We have to talk about a lot of issues. But at the moment, the ground has been, to a great extent for this election, the ground has been, settled for by the issue of electoral bonds, which came out sometime in the middle of February, and throughout March, it remained the top of the headlines. So we will be talking about electoral bonds. We'll be talking about how civil society has intervened, the various declarations the candidates have to make, the purpose it serves. Now, who do we turn to when we want to talk about all these issues which are aimed at making the election impartial and fair, so that the Indian voter thinks that the choice they made was actually not just reflected in the mandate which has been given, but also in the manner in which it has been conducted. So I am going to be talking to Mr. Jagdeep Chokhar, who has been a long doyen of the civil society, somebody who was in the faculty of the Indian Institute of Management, but that is not the management guru role. That is not something that we are going to be talking about him. For the last 20 years plus, he has been engaged as a very leading light of the civil society in trying to make elections more fair and impartial. Welcome to this program, Mr. Chokhar.
Thank
Let
you,
me start.
Nilanjan.
Let me start with something which caught my eye. The Prime Minister has very recently given an interview to the editor-in-chief of the ANI, the premier news agency, in which he has said, talking about the issue of electoral bonds, he appears to be quite upset with the decision which has happened of the Supreme Court. He says that today we have completely pushed the country towards black money. And that is why I say everyone will regret it. When they will think honestly, everyone will regret it. Then he goes on to give his logic. Obviously, it is in favor of continuation of the electoral bonds. He says that in total, 3,000 companies in the country have given electoral bonds. Out of those 3,000, he doesn't use the word only, but he suggests 26 companies are such on which investigations have been done. They say ED, VD, etc., etc. Now, out of those 3,000 donors, there are only 26 which are being investigated. So he thinks that 26 is not a very large number that who are being investigated and who are donating hundreds of crores of rupees. And out of those, there were just 14 where there were raids. At that time, the bonds were bought. So he's accepting that there was prima facie evidence of 14 companies which presented, which donated electoral bonds, not saying that to which party, but who were being raided at that time, and the raids after that, as has been reported in newspapers, mysteriously stopped, and that only 26 other companies were being investigated. Now, I want to get your first reaction to the idea that will you regret at some point, oh my God, why have the electoral bonds gone away? Why did we file the petition in the Supreme Court against it? When the government passed the law and it did so in 2019, would you regret it?
Not at all. I have no doubt whatsoever in my mind that we will not regret, or at least I will not regret filing that petition, for the simple reason that, to pretend that electoral bonds had made our democracy the finest in the world or somewhere close to that is, I think, is a very big folly.
Right.
Let me point out that the reputation Indian democracy carried from 1950 to 2016 across the world seemed to be quite good. Most of the world seemed to think Indian democracy was doing well. Sorry. Obviously, no democracy is perfect, and no
Right.
democracy can ever be perfect. But Indian democracy overall, since from 1950 till about 2016, was respected in the world without any doubt, at least in my mind. Then in 2017 came electoral bonds,
Right.
and the scheme was notified in 2018, and it worked till 2024. Now, we filed this petition in 2017, soon after the scheme was announced, even before it was notified.
Right.
And we had done it on several facets of the scheme, which were available by the time we filed the petition. One of which was that soon after the, or why soon after, the same day as the then finance minister, who unfortunately is no more,
Right.
after he presented the budget in the morning, where
Mr.
there were
Arun
two,
Jaitley you're talking about.
yes, yes, he made his budget speech in which there were two paragraphs, the title of which was Transparency in Electoral Funding.
Mhm.
And in the first paragraph, he said that for the last 70 years, we have not been able to deal with the funding issue. And now, in the next paragraph, I will tell you what I plan to do. So everybody seemed quite happy about it. Then in the afternoon, he made he sort of conducted what is called the customary media interaction post the budget, in
Right.
which he said, and I read it as reported in the Indian Express, that the bonds will be bearer in nature. The identity of the donor will be anonymous.
Right.
Now, from that afternoon, I have been writing and asking that I am looking for a dictionary which says that transparency and anonymity are synonyms of each other. Now,
Yes.
that was the first issue that at least came to my mind, and then several of us discussed that and we filed a petition. Now, to
Right.
claim that a scheme where the donor will be anonymous, that scheme will be transparent, is a contradiction of the highest order in itself. So that was the basis of the electoral bond scheme. And subsequently, as more and more information came through, even after filing our petition, some RTI activists got copies of the file notings when the electoral bonds were being introduced. And it was discovered that two constitutional authorities like the Election Commission of India and the Reserve Bank of India had opposed the scheme in no uncertain terms,
Right.
etc., etc. And a whole lot of things came out. Then the Supreme Court gave a judgment on 15th of February saying the
Right.
scheme was unconstitutional. Now, in our petition, which we had filed in 2017, this is all we had asked for, that we prayed that the scheme be declared unconstitutional, which the Supreme Court did. But the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, and we really appreciate what the Supreme Court did, it asked for disclosures of the monies exchanged under electoral bonds in the last
Right.
6, 7 years. Now, the
Which have been
biggest,
bought and which were actually donated to various political parties.
yes, the biggest revelation was not how much money was donated to which party, according to me. The biggest revelation was the extent to which the
Mm.
State Bank of India and I presume the Government of India went towards not disclosing these details. They
Story.
first the State Bank of India filed an application seeking extension of time, saying it will take 3.5 months to give the information. When the Supreme Court came down heavily, the same information was given in 2 days, which proved that the earlier affidavit was false.
Right.
Then complete information was not given. The chairman of the State Bank of India, who had filed a compliance affidavit that the information as required by the Supreme Court has been given, was asked that please give all information that you hold Otherwise, the court will be constrained to proceed for action for willful disobedience of the court. And the
Right.
court asked the chairman of the State Bank of India to give an affidavit personally to say that nothing has been withheld and everything has been given. Now, this entire process, which took about, I think, 8 to 10 days, was the bigger revelation, the extent to which the government went at
Hmm.
preventing to disclose this information. So that, I think, is, and then subsequently what has come out, regardless of the number of companies that the prime minister seems to have counted, I don't have those numbers because the entire data is so huge that it is not,
That's
we have
right.
not taken the whole data and done the complete analysis. I guess the government has done it. But the point is the amounts of money that have been paid to political parties, either when there was some action being contemplated against the companies, or
Or
when
when it was
companies,
already underway.
it was underway, or it was expected to happen, or a company expected a contract. There are
Right.
instances like a company has given 140 crores and got a contract worth 14,000 crores. So all this, whether it is 30 companies or 26 companies or 13 companies or two companies, I don't think that is the issue. The issue is a large amount of money changed hands without the knowledge of the people of this country, and with a scheme which had an inbuilt potential to choke the funding to opposition parties, which
Right.
is what the Supreme Court said was a violation of the level playing field, which is a necessary part of a free and fair election. And therefore, that was one, the level playing field being disturbed, and the other was denial of the voters' right to information about where do political parties get their funding from, so that the voters can make an informed choice while voting. So these were the two issues on which the scheme was declared unconstitutional. And
Right.
the amount of data that has come out, if the prime minister claims it is no big deal, I can only most respectfully disagree. I think it is a very big deal when these kinds of things have been happening, and they have been happening deliberately behind the public eye. And the amount of effort, I mean, the Supreme Court hired a lawyer, a
Mhm.
senior, very, very well known and experienced lawyer, who appeared 3 times from London
Right.
when there was no single legal issue being argued. All he was saying was that we will need more time. I mean,
Right.
there is so many things that have happened in this
We're
case.
talking about that he was hired by the bank or by the government of India.
Well, he was appearing for the bank.
Right.
And the question also arises, uh, the bank must have paid him a significant amount of money. And whether that money belonged to the public or belonged to the shareholders of the State Bank of India is a technical issue which somebody will figure out. But I think there is a lot that leaves a bad odor about this whole thing.
Right.
And to brush it aside by saying that there were only 20 companies or 32 companies, I think is beside the point.
It's just hair splitting, in a way, and
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
trying to find an escape route. There is one point which I want to ask. Let me for a moment, be the devil's advocate, as they say. A lot of people have said, especially those who were critical of the petition and also the Supreme Court judgment, they say that the donor's privacy has been violated. They have also said that when the company's corporate sector would pay by check, the government was in a position to know which company was paying which opposition parties, and thereby, if the government so wanted, it could penalize these companies. Now, by disclosing the name of the donor, they are saying that this doesn't really solve the problem. The government can still penalize these companies once it is known that which companies have donated in a big way to various opposition parties. So the entire purpose is that make it a level playing field will go away. So it should have remained anonymous so that nobody could know that who is paying who, and it will be a level playing field. What do you have to say about this logic?
I have two responses to this.
Yes.
First, the electoral bond scheme as formulated and as it functioned. Uh, and it was admitted in the Supreme Court hearing by the Solicitor General and the Auditor General and the Attorney General of India that there was partial transparency, not full transparency.
Right.
That partial transparency gave an undue advantage to the party in power. The party in power knew who was paying to whom.
Right.
Other parties did not know.
Mhm.
That is what made the level playing field uneven. So there was information asymmetry in the electoral bond scheme because although the State Bank of India was supposed to have not disclosed this to anybody except when there is an order of the court and so on and so forth, of
Right.
course, when there was an order of the highest court of the land, they bent backwards not to disclose it.
They
Uh,
tried their level best, not to
yeah.
disclose that
So
information.
be that as it may, the fact that the State Bank had the information, State Bank of India, being the government-owned bank, could not withhold this information from the finance ministry and hence from the finance minister and hence from the party of the finance minister. Therefore, the ruling party had an undue advantage, and that is what made the playing field uneven. The other response is, can you repeat your question? I think I've.
No, I was saying, that they say, that the right, the privacy of the donor
Yeah,
is
yeah,
very
yeah, 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 yeah.
limited,
That
and that
ruling
also
party.
that the government can penalize those
Yeah,
companies which
yeah,
are donating money to the opposition
yeah.
parties.
Let us not say the government. Let us say the ruling party could penalize. the,
That's
the
your way of
point here
putting it.
is that there are ruling parties in and ruling parties. There is a ruling party in the center. There are ruling parties in various states, and different
That's
parties are
right.
ruling parties. So wherever a party is in power, it had the potential to penalize the opposition parties or the donors to
The
opposition
donor of the
parties.
opposition parties.
Now the question that comes up in my mind is this issue of victimizing or penalizing the donors to other parties is caused by whom? The answer is it is caused by a political party for other political parties. In state A, political party X is in power, so it takes action against donors to political party Y in
Right.
state B. Now, therefore, if you look at the aggregate situation, this is a problem caused by political parties,
Hmm.
not by anybody else. No
Right.
other organ in society has a hand in creating this problem except political parties in
Hmm.
plural, not singular.
Okay.
Now, political parties are supposed to be a very important institution in this country because a representative democracy in a large society like ours cannot function without political parties. They are an essential component of our democracy.
Yes, please.
If the essential components of our democracy cannot behave in a responsible fashion, and then they want that the system should be so designed that they can continue to behave irresponsibly, although it does damage to the fabric of democracy elsewhere. This, to my mind, is very irresponsible and not expected, and to me, not acceptable from political parties that they behave so irresponsibly that they do not countenance the fact that some donors will donate to other parties.
Right.
Now, for this, I hold all the political parties of the country responsible. And I would urge them to be responsible. And I would also say that if they are not responsible, which they are not in several other issues, I may add, like putting up criminal candidates and so on and so
Yes, we
forth.
will come to that matter
Yeah.
just
So
after
all I'm
the
saying is, if
point.
political parties as a group do not behave responsibly, then they
Yes,
will be taken to task by the people of this country at some point or the other, which
right,
will be very unfortunate, because it will be a very serious damage to the democratic fabric of the nation.
right, right. You just mentioned the issue of criminal cases. In fact, that is an issue which I wanted to talk up to you about next. If you actually go back to, your journey in the civil society, in the process of trying to ensure that we have a fair and impartial elections in the country, that globally the respect which is there, actually there is, we have a case to get that respect. Now, 2003 Supreme Court judgment in the Union of India versus Association of Democratic Rights, the organization that you were involved with right from the beginning, as part of your journey into this entire foray of electoral reforms and trying to intervene effectively on behalf of the people of India. Now, it said that prior to that, the candidate did not have to reveal anything except maybe the identity. But after that judgment, they have had to reveal the number of criminal cases which are pending against them, the educational qualifications, and the total wealth of the candidates. Now, these three things are submitted by affidavits. I remember as a journalist, after the judgment in 2003, being involved in various backroom operations in the media for the 2004 elections. Everybody, television channels to newspapers to independent journalists, were very much excited about this breakdown of candidates, how many had a criminal past, how many of them were crore-patis. But then, as gradually time passed, from 2004 onward, we're now in 2024, 20 years passed, it kind of became accepted amongst people that people will be having candidates will have criminal records, candidates will not be very highly educationally qualified, and most importantly they'll have large number of criminal cases pending against them. Now, you in the area, you people have also done an analysis of whatever data is available about 2024 at the moment, and I was just reading it. It is just shocking. I just want to share with the people who are watching this program. 19% of the candidates whose data has been analyzed so far have criminal cases against them, of which 13% are serious cases: murder, attempt to murder, rape, or other serious heinous crimes against women. 29% of the candidates above of whose data has been analyzed are all having a wealth of more than a crore, or what is called as crorepati in India. Now, this is up 16% in 2009. So, which means that in just 15 years, you have a 13% rise in the number of people with a wealth of more than a crore, in their banks, in the banks, in the wealth total, everything. So, it's really not another manner in which it's not a level playing field. Yet, are people becoming cynical? Because people are voting such lawmakers also, irrespective of all this data being available and analyzed and put in the public domain by organizations like ADR.
Well, first of all, the full name of the organization is Association for Democratic Reforms,
That's
not
right. Sorry.
Association
Just
of
by,
Democratic Rights.
the slip
That's
of
all
the
right.
tongue that came out.
It often happens, not to worry. The issue of people with criminal cases pending against them getting elected in larger and larger numbers in successive elections is a very serious one, which has engaged our attention in a very big way. Over the years, we have discovered a couple of things which are possible explanations of this phenomenon. One is that uh, in any election, even if there are 10 candidates or 15 candidates or 20 candidates, the question is how many candidates have a realistic chance of getting elected?
Right.
If we ask this question at random, I will not ask you because you are too senior and experienced a person. The answer is that in any constituency, there are about 2 to 3 people
That's right.
who have a realistic chance of getting elected. All the others, they contest and they contest in all seriousness, etc. But the chances of their getting elected are close to nil. So the question is, if these 3 people happen to be from 3 major political parties in that constituency, and if all these 3 happen to have criminal cases pending against them, then what choice does a voter have? Either a voter votes for one of the many candidates who have no chance of getting elected, which in effect is called wasting one's vote, which is
Right.
of course wrong. Or if the voter wants his or her vote to be counted, so to say, to so that he or she puts it for a winning candidate or a candidate who ultimately wins, then the candidate has to vote for one of the 3 people who have a realistic chance of getting elected and who have criminal cases against them. Now we thought of this and we called these constituencies red alert constituencies,
Okay.
where 3 or more candidates have criminal cases pending against them.
Okay.
And in the country at large, we find that there are almost 50% constituencies where
50%.
almost 50%, it could be
Almost 50.
48 or 49,
Right.
where candidates have no choice. They are
And
either
the voters
vote,
have no choice.
the voters have no choice. They either vote for a candidate with criminal case against him or her, or they vote for a candidate who will never get elected. Now,
Why not
this
Nota? Why not
No,
Nota?
Nota is a very different story. Nota, we can have a separate discussion on it. Nota has not been implemented properly by the Election Commission of India. It
Okay.
has followed the letter of the Supreme Court judgment.
The
It has
spirit.
not. It has not followed the spirit of the Supreme Court judgment. And I am happy to say 2 state election commissions of
Mhm.
Maharashtra and Haryana have actually implemented Nota in the right spirit. And we have been working with state election commissions to do that. And we hope that once enough state election commissions start doing it, the Election Commission of India will also be willing to
Will also
see,
be forced to do it.
not forced, but they'll be encouraged to do it.
Like morally bound. Can we use
Yeah.
that?
So
We
so
can use the
Nota
word
is
morally
not,
bound.
and as of now, all political parties campaign against Nota. They purposely say that Nota is a waste of a vote, and therefore Nota is not yet a viable option.
Okay.
So
So
the voters have no choice but to vote for such people, and political parties refuse to stop giving tickets to such people. Although the Supreme Court has even said that if a political party gives a ticket to a candidate with a criminal case pending against him or her, they will have to give reasons why they are giving it to this person,
I
and why can they not find people without criminal cases. When the Supreme
right.
Court gave this decision, the political parties started observing it more in the breach than in follow, and
Right.
they started giving ads in nondescript Mufassil newspapers in a corner somewhere, and people went and filed contempt petitions in the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
Supreme Court actually fined 4 political parties for not following the directions of the Supreme Court, but those fines were unfortunately so small or insignificant for political parties that it did not make any difference. So Supreme Court is shying away from saying that that people against whom a case has been registered 6 months or 1 year before the date of the election, number one. Number two, where the prescribed punishment is 2 years or more of imprisonment.
Right.
And number three, where charges have been framed, which is the fourth stage in the criminal jurisprudence system. if a candidate satisfies these three conditions, he or she should not be allowed to contest elections.
Okay.
Now, Supreme Court can do this, but they are just being, diffident or shy at not.
Possibly
They
they do not want to shake up the system so much.
no,
Now,
no. They keep saying that this is a legislative issue, but twice in our petitions, the court has gone and said that if there is a legislative vacuum or there is an infirmity in law, and the legislature has not had time or inclination to fill the gap or correct the
right,
problem, and three, public interest is suffering, then
right.
the Supreme Court has a right to make law till the
The
legislature
judiciary
makes
can
it.
intervene. Yes,
They did it in 2002 in the criminalization case. They
right.
did it in 2023 in the appointment of election commissioners case.
Election commissions.
But
Yes,
in this case, they have been fighting shy, and until that happens, in the 2019 Lok Sabha, there were 43% MPs with criminal cases pending against them. And
right.
I shudder to think that
What
in
will be the case this time?
2024, they may cross for 50%.
Right. So that is a big worry. There's just one question which I have. You talked about the red constituencies. Where all those candidates who had a chance of winning had criminal cases pending against them.
Three or more.
Three or more, mainly basically from the mainline, either a very powerful independent
Yeah,
candidate
yeah,
or from
yeah,
the most prominent political parties.
yeah.
In constituencies where just one or two, that there are candidates who are from important political parties, who have a realistic chance of getting elected, or even an independent candidate, who has a realistic chance of getting elected. In those constituencies where there is a choice available before the voter, does the voter opt more for somebody who does not have a criminal past? What is your past experience tell us?
I can't quote any data on this, but my
Right.
experience anecdotally is
Yes,
that
anecdotally only,
that
because you have
the
been involved
that
for
the
so
that
long
the
with these cases.
that the 57% of the MPs who do not have criminal cases against them are such people.
Okay.
They are
So
those. It is not to say that in those constituencies there was nobody with a criminal case pending against him or her.
no, I
But
think that's
these
a very valid argument of yours.
57% are all still there. How long will they remain? I don't know. But as of now, such candidates do get elected. So therefore, there is no reason for political party to say that these are the only people who we can give tickets to, and there is nobody else. I mean, in such a large population, they can't find good people.
I'm sorry, I'm asking you, a question related to data. This 57% that of MPs who do not have a criminal case against them. What has been your experience from 2003 onwards? Has this number been static, or has it been in decline, or has it been rising?
Oh, it has been in decline, clearly. In
Okay.
2004, the MPs with criminal cases were 25%, and so-called clean MPs were 75%.
Okay.
In 2009, the MPs with criminal cases was 30%, and the clean MPs became 70% from 75. In 2009, the MPs with criminal cases were 34%. So the
You're
clean
talking
MP,
2014, after 2009.
no, 2004, 25,
Right.
2009, 30,
30,
2014,
2014, 34.
34. So
Right.
clean candidates were 66,
Right.
and 2019, 43. So it
So
has
let's
come down to 57.
So we hope that this time it doesn't further decline, and we will
I
get we
I
will get to
certainly
know
hope
about
so, but I would not be surprised if it declines.
Yes, I don't think that anybody would be surprised, but as they say, in Hindi, this very famous "Umeed pe duniya tiki hui hai," so we can also depend that things will improve, and people will. One last question to you. You have been trying to intervene in what we largely call the civil society. In the last 10 years, the civil society has been damned a lot. It has been termed anti-national. Even you can possibly cite instances where people would have made all kinds of allegations citing your intention, you know, criticizing your intention of what you're trying to do. What kind of a future do you see for this kind of volunteerism, this kind of civil society action?
This civil society action has always been difficult. We
Right.
started this activity in 1999
That's right.
when a different government was in power. And 99 to 2014, let us say, with NDA government in between, we have faced obstacles with every government. And once
Okay.
again, I should correct myself. Actually, I am against this idea of saying the government. It is the political party in power.
Okay.
The government is a neutral or more or less inert entity. It is the party in power which sort of calls the shots. So,
Right.
regardless of the party in power, I think civil society activity is very difficult and it is very tiresome. It can be frustrating, and one has to be very, very more or less dogmatic to stick with what you are doing,
Right.
because we have seen in our experience of ADR, all political parties, regardless of their political inclination or philosophy, they have been against many things that we have tried to do, starting with criminalization of politics. In that issue, also, all political parties got together unanimously to prevent that from happening, and the Supreme Court came to our aid. In the question of getting political parties under the Right to Information Act, in the Central Information Commission, we got a full bench unanimous judgment of the Central Information Commission to say six national political parties are public authorities under the
Yes.
RTI Act, but all six political parties, which are the dominant parties at that time, defied the decision of the Central Information Commission. And
Okay.
there was another case of use of foreign sources by two prominent political parties.
Right.
And these political parties, which are at loggerheads with each other all the time,
But
got
then they
together
united on that.
got together to amend
Yes.
the FCRA twice. And once they amended the FCRA, which had been repealed 8 years earlier.
That's
So
right.
it was like doing knee
I remember that
replacement.
case completely.
No, no, it was like doing knee replacement on a person who had been dead for 8 years. But but both political parties who are at each other's throats all the time got together. So
That's
political parties get together whenever they see, in their opinion, a threat to their way of working. And as I pointed out earlier in the discussion, political parties have behaved in irresponsible ways in many cases.
right.
And therefore, I think it is extremely important that we should have a law to regulate political parties and their functioning, which is impossible because political parties, through their representatives, make the law. But unless we can have that happen, unless we can get demonstrable internal democracy in political parties
Right.
and financial transparency in political parties, the kind of work we are doing or we have been trying to do will continue to be difficult. And we have to keep
Right.
struggling at it.
Well, I think that's very well put. And I think I really like the point that you are constantly referring to political parties in the plural, making it very clear that you in the civil society do not target any single party, as is often construed that for you party A and party B are no different, because somebody may be in power at the center, somebody else, the another party may be at the power in the state. But when it comes to preventing information about their activities, their finances to come out in the public, they possibly come together, as the case that you were mentioning, to coming together to amend the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Thank you very much for coming and joining me, Mr. Chokar, on this program. Very well put. We have talked about electoral bonds, about the criminality and the wealth of candidates, and also the role of civil society. And I hope that organizations like yours will continue their relentless battle to ensure that Indian elections remain fair and impartial. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.